I will never fall into the mistake of putting the urgent before the important, because otherwise, a bunch of urgent things will start to appear in my life. The important thing is to produce what I was born for, to fulfill my dream, to convey the message of my soul to the world. That is the important thing, and I cannot put anything ahead. It is inexorable to do what corresponds to us, as inexorable as feeding our body, because otherwise it dies. It is to feed our soul by doing what it came into the world to do. Otherwise, something in you also dies, and it becomes almost like a zombie, and begins to be tossed back and forth by the distractions of society. Each of us has a message to give to the world that can only be given by us. If we don't do what we came to do, something will not be said, some word will not be heard, someone will lose, some dreams will die, because each of us has a message to give to the world when it fulfills its nature. The Romans called that genius, that sacred center that is only yours, unique and unrepeatable. The universe is a big puzzle where each of us brings a piece. Each of us has a piece to deliver, has something to say. Many things will cease to be if our word is not spoken. We are unique, irreplaceable. We have a mission in the world, which is not simply to survive. What I know, the hardest thing there is to sit and do your work. A person who's just starting now to face life's challenges should know this. There is nothing that is difficult that comes from outside. The hardest is overcoming your inertia, empty talk from your mind, the postponements, the excuses that you invent yourself. Sit and do your work. Whatever happens, do not entertain conversations. Sit and start doing what corresponds to you. That is the hardest thing. And the first thing we have to identify is what we are fighting against. We are not fighting against anything outside. We are fighting against an internal enemy. And it's terrible because the internal enemy is not so clear to see, and we don't know exactly what it is. You get confused with it. Now, I overcame the resistance today, but I have no illusion. Tomorrow morning, it will wait for me in the morning with a new strategy. Many cripple and disfigure their lives because of resistance. In other words, it's such a terrible addiction that you start thinking about doing something. You start inventing excuses and prejudices. Tomorrow, today, I have to do such thing. Not now. Today is not the best time. It's such a terrible addiction of postponement, of fleeing from ourselves, that it says it's easier for you to get rid of any drug than to get rid of resistance. Resistance takes so many forms, justifies itself in so many ways, that you don't know that you are sabotaging yourself. Resistance is always you sabotaging your dreams, but it's difficult for you to identify. In other words, many external attractions, so that you don't listen to yourself. Vocation comes from voice. It's like a voice inside us that calls us and says, "And this? But are you going to give up on this? Who will you be without this?" And all the paths already prepared, because society already knows that most of humanity is an escape, refugees from themselves, and all human beings will face this. So don't think it's a particular thing. It's not just you. Resistance is the drama of humanity. Resistance is invisible but sensitive, force of repulsion, pushing us away from our work. Resistance is internal, doesn't arise from any circumstance or external adversaries. We generate it and perpetuate it. It arises from a terrible fear, which is the fear of growing, which is the greatest of all fears. It forces you to reposition yourself in life. It isolates you from those relationships you had before. It's the greatest of all fears. Don't think I didn't grow because of blame from my boss, from my father, from my mother, from my children, from my wife, From my mother-in-law, who's always guilty. No, you didn't grow because you had a terrible fear of growing. The demands it brings are very heavy. If you transfer that responsibility to another, you won't see the enemy. And if you don't see the enemy, you can't dominate it. Resistance is insidious. It lies, seduces, intimidates, and betrays. It is multifaceted. Do you think resistance will come to you and say, "You won't commit because I don't want you to"? I am resistance. You won't accept such a thing. It will present itself with that face that has the greatest opening for you, that has the most chance of convincing you. The resistance is relentless. It's a machine of destruction that never stops or tires. You'll notice that when a person wants to react and work to do something that transforms them and contributes to humanity, they'll deal with an endless fight with resistance, a lazy person who's never fought. If you tell her, resistance, resistance, what's that? When you don't react, you don't cause trouble. Resistance has an easy game there, but the more you react, the more powerful it becomes. And it doesn't stop until it immobilizes you, until it convinces you to give up. It won't stop attacking you. It's an absolutely inexorable force of nature until it brings you back to the chair. It won't stop. It's that step that's been placed in front of you so that you, channeling a greater force, step onto the next level. You won't climb without facing that wall in front of you at every step, isn't it? If we imagine a staircase, each wall that's put in front of us is resistance. There's only one way to overcome it: up, channeling will. Otherwise, you won't move from there. And it's like that for all beings. Isn't just you climbing stairs. The whole universe is on an escalator. I'm the only one who has to make this effort. No, all beings grow by facing obstacles. Resistance is infallible. What it most prevents you from doing must be the best thing you have to do in life. So it's a compass. You know that thing it's been tricking you with since the beginning of time. And it's not affirmative. It doesn't say, "Don't do this." It uses subtle arguments. "Do it tomorrow, next week." That's its language. You don't identify it as an enemy. It seems like it's your friend. It's helping you, but you'll never go. You postpone it until the grave. It never lets you go. And what it's blocked you from the most until today is probably what you most need to do. So it's a compass. As the Dalai Lama says, we learn a lot from our enemies. They try to stop us exactly in the direction where we would be most useful. Resistance never sleeps. Fear never leaves us. It's a battle to be fought every day, so it always works to intimidate you with all sorts of things. Its fundamental weapon is fear, from the simplest to the most powerful. Resistance plays to win. Its target is the gift that brought us into the world, and the goal is to kill. It doesn't play around. Its goal is to eliminate from you any impulse to step up to the next level. And it doesn't play to decrease for you to do less. It plays to eliminate until you settle down and just survive. Then peacefully, it leaves you alone. Resistance feeds on fear. The strength of resistance comes from our fear. To master is to conquer it. To master it is not to overcome it, because no one overcomes fear. Fear is a force of nature that will accompany you always, eternally. But fear, not necessarily, is to stop you. It's there to make you proceed with more caution. It's foolish to think that the great warriors of the past did not experience fear. They did. And fear warned them to be extra vigilant from that point on. Fear doesn't have to be in front of you, immobilizing you. It can be behind you, pushing you forward. Resistance plays with fear. We have to know how to deal with fear, not to eliminate it, to master it. Eliminate. We will never eliminate, but it can be our ally. Resistance will only hinder you from climbing. It acts in a single direction, up. Hold on to descend peacefully. It will make your life easier, you'll see. From a higher level to a lower one, there is no resistance, and it's stronger in the final stretch. Now I achieved this goal. I'm almost there. Now I can relax. Don't relax until you've reached firm ground. Resistance in the final stretch. It attacks with everything. In the final stretch, don't sleep, because in the final stretch is when resistance attacks with everything. When it sees your nose crossing the finish line, that's when it throws with all its might. It doesn't give up. If we learned from it and had that objectivity and that effectiveness to achieve our goals, we'd be set in life. Resistance is relentless. It never sleeps. Resistance bribes you. It offers trinkets. It gives candy to distract you from doing what you have to do, things that bring you quick satisfaction, because building yourself doesn't bring quick satisfaction. And one of the things that resistance will do is attack with things that bring quick gratification. It's a very common tool. Life is an escape from oneself, typical of resistance. Unplug from this system and know that we will only be happy by doing our work. Resistance and lack of self-confidence will, what do you think? Am I an artist? Am I a philosopher? Am I not? Don't know what. He says, look, well, that's synonymous of being, because when a person has doubts, it's a sign that they're afraid, and fear in general is pointing in the direction that you have potential. A person who truly wants to achieve their dreams, they have patience, persistence, and no fantasies. They know they'll have to go through criticism, knows that no one will recognize, knows this, knows that, has patience, assures oneself. He assures himself, doesn't need external approval, realizes itself by doing what it does, doesn't expect anything to be easy. Nature doesn't make jumps. This kind of fantasy of I'll go there, I'll win, that's great. Resistance defeats this kind of person with a breath. Resistance and support. I will gather my relatives. I will tell them my dreams. They will help me. He says, look, this is the kind of thing that is a declaration of incompetence. Doing what you have to do is only you, and no one will understand, and you can't do it with the strength of others. It's with yours. The most others can do is to wave at you there at the port. No one can do it for you, or you have the strength to do it, or it won't work. Dreams are not realized with borrowed energy. Psychic energy spent brooding over everything they did to you is a waste of time and resistance. Ah, how unfair the world is. So-and-so did this. So-and-so did that. My father told me such a thing when I was little. How can I be a fulfilled person with such a past? Forget it. Resistance. The people who were fulfilled had parents of all kinds in the history of humanity and did what they had to do despite all that. Forget it. Complaints, lamentations, and self-pity, always plausible justifications for you not to do things, but none of them sufficient, as we've already discussed. There have been sick people. There have been cancer patients who won the Olympics. There have been people with many children who wrote novels. There have been people with physical disabilities who discovered the mysteries of astronomy. There have been people with huge problems who still went there and made their mark. Therefore, it may be that the arguments of resistance are true, but they are not enough to stop you. In other words, another deception and resistance can be overcome. The great works of humanity are proof of this. If someone hadn't overcome resistance, who made the Ninth Symphony, the great works are the trace of those who overcame resistance. And if one overcame, it means that we have that possibility. But something grand, proportional to our possibilities, let's do, because a human being is a great being and came into the world to leave its mark and cannot allow itself, nor accommodate to mediocrity, because that is the root of unhappiness and of all the evils of the world.
If you enjoyed the content, please hit the like button and subscribe for more. Your support means everything to us. Thanks for watching and see you in the next one.